All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. I'm back here again with my co-host Trevor Kaufman, and as you can
Yes,
see,
sir.
he is clapping once again. The Phoenix Suns streak, Trevor, it continues. They've now won, I believe, 8 playoff games in a row. They took a 1-0 series lead over the Los Angeles Clippers earlier today. And we'll get more into that series in a few minutes, Trevor. But, a lot's happened last week. We've had the second round of the NBA playoffs, obviously in full swing. The last series just wrapped up this evening with the Hawks beating the 76ers, which shocked a lot of us, and including both of us here. And the Clippers beat the Jazz, Trevor. And this is what I wanted to talk about first, about how Kawhi Leonard goes out. The series is tied 2-2. And the Utah Jazz have a golden opportunity, Trevor. They have a golden opportunity, and they squandered it. They lost both games with Kawhi Leonard hurt. The Clippers won that series in 6. I do want to note that Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell were playing injured. That is something, to take note of. But regardless,
Oh my God.
the Clippers surprised me, and I think they surprised a lot of people beating them without Kawhi Leonard. But I wanted to ask the guy who predicted the Clippers would beat the Jazz, Trevor. I wanted to ask you, were you surprised that they beat the Jazz without Kawhi?
Oh, yes. Without Kawhi, yes.
Okay.
I've been saying it all year. Utah are frauds. They're a great regular season team. And Ryan, you can attest to this. On this podcast multiple times said Utah will not go far in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Just to confirm, you remember me saying this.
Yeah,
okay.
You did say that.
Just wanted to confirm. I never believed in Utah. History is repeating itself. Utah's a good regular season team.
Yep.
But when it comes to winning in the postseason, they have one great player and a bunch of average role players. And in today's NBA, if you don't have 2 great players on your team, you're not going to go anywhere. So for me, yes, Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley were both playing injured, but Kawhi Leonard is a top 5 player in the NBA. When you lose a guy like that, that is a huge loss. That loss outweighs Conley and Mitchell playing at whatever, 75, 80% or whatever the percentage is. So for me, very surprising that Utah lost both games. They didn't even force a 7th game. They lost 2-0 with Kawhi not being in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And how they lost kind of surprised me. Game 5, the first half, I think they made 17 threes in the first half against the Clippers in Game 5, and they lose. And when you make 17 threes in a half, you should be up by 20. I mean, that is just unreal shooting. That is next level shooting.
Mm-hmm.
They were only up by 5, and then when they started missing, you live by the 3, you die by the 3. The Clippers came back and dominated the second half. Game 6, they're up by 25, 30 seconds into the third quarter. And I want to give Tyronn Lue a lot of credit because he has done a fantastic coaching job in these playoffs, making all the right adjustments. But Quinn Snyder, who was supposedly a coach of the year, why is Rudy Gobert in that game? You have to go small. Terrence Mann is making 3 after 3 after 3. And if I'm Rudy Gobert, maybe I'm thinking to myself, how about we run this guy off? How about I go out there and run him off the 3-point line and at least force him to dribble? I mean, Terrence Mann it was catch and shoot, warm up practice shots. They're wide open.
Mm-hmm.
And Quinn Snyder, I think he was just like shell shocked at what he was seeing. I don't think anybody expected to see Terrence Mann go for 40 in a playoff game. And like Quinn Snyder just forgot how to coach for about 20 minutes. He just left Gobert in the game, made no adjustments. And with how small the Clippers were, Utah should have played. I think this is what Utah should have done. I think they should have gone Conley, Mitchell, Ingles, Clarkson, and Bogdanovich. I would have literally played with 5.
O'Neal.
Or O'Neal, exactly. Or O'Neal. Mm-hmm. A combination of 5 of those 6 players.
Yeah.
Tell Derek Favors and Rudy Gobert to go to the locker room, start showering, you're done for the night. You need to adjust, and they didn't. But again, I'm not entirely surprised. I was never high on Utah, and they proved me right. I will say, Ryan, this NBA season I've been pretty spot on, and I like to talk about myself, and everything that's happened, everything I said that would happen has happened this year in the NBA.
I'll tell you, not in the Eastern Conference, though. We'll get to that later. I mean, the Eastern Conference has been kind of flipped on its head, if I say so myself.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's
if Brooklyn was healthy.
Well, we can get to that. But I want to say,
anybody.
I want to say, well, in these playoffs, But that's what's great about the NBA, especially this year, Trevor, because right in the past, I believe I'd say in the past 5 years, there's always been a heavy favorite, right? When LeBron was in Cleveland and KD and Curry and Clay, and even when KD wasn't there wasn't really there wasn't intrigue from, I was a Cleveland fan, so I was intrigued, obviously. But like the everyday fan, I'm sure, Trevor, you were kind of annoyed. Like you're probably a little annoyed. Like, all right, here we go again. Like part 3,
I was
part
4 years in a
4,
row.
Yeah. So I think it's really good for the NBA, though.
It doesn't help that my Suns won 19 games one year. But
look, Trevor,
I hear your point.
I've been there. I was there 2 years ago. My team won 19 games. So we've both had our time. But regardless, that's what I like about the NBA right now, Trevor, is like there's so many things, so many unpredictable series, so many upsets, so many underdogs winning. And that's what's great. But talking about this series, the Utah Jazz, it's another pathetic showing. And I think a lot of it does fall on Quinn Snyder. Because, Trevor, this wasn't the players' fault, in my opinion. They shot 48% from 3 in Game 6.
Utah did as a team or Clippers?
No, Utah. They were hitting their shots. Donovan Mitchell, 60% from 3. Royce O'Neal, 67%. Bogdanovich, 50%. They're hitting their threes. So for them to lose that game is the fault of the head coach. And bringing up Rudy Gobert is a great point, Trevor. Rudy Gobert is at minus 24 in the box plus minus at Game 6.
I saw that.
Derek Favors played 6 minutes, Trevor. He was a plus 12. He was the best box plus minus on that team. Now, you say, obviously, Derek Favors doesn't need to play. He's 6'9". He's a little bit more mobile, a little bit,
I agree with you.
Than Gobert.
He
could have played. When you see your team playing better with Derek Favors in the game, why do you just plop in Gobert? I don't care if he's getting paid $200 million. Your job as that coach isn't to play the guys that get paid a lot. Your job is to play the guys who give you the best chance to win.
Totally agree.
And now, look, we can get into them paying Gobert. What was it? $200 million, I'm pretty sure. It was something astronomical. This is a problem in today's NBA, Trevor. This is what a lot of teams are afraid of. And I'm going to use my Cavs because it's the easiest example off the top of my head. But Jared Allen is a restricted free agent this offseason, Trevor. Very similar to Gobert. It's very limited offensive game. Very good defender, very good rebounder. But he can't shoot. And when you have big guys like Gobert in today's NBA, paying them the max or the super max, your team's not going to go as far as it can because you're overpaying for something you can get from rotational pieces. Like I look at Boston for years, Trevor, and even now, Robert Williams and Daniel Tice were so serviceable. That's a great example to me because neither of those guys need to get paid a lot, but they do exactly what they need to do. They do their job. You look at the Clippers, small ball. They don't need a big man. Zubac is absolutely terrible. He's terrible.
They might need a big man for this series. I'll say that. But go ahead.
They might, and DeMarcus Cousins might be able to provide that. We'll see. But,
seriously.
But I don't think that paying a big man that much money is helpful. And the head coach is too loyal to the money. Quinn Snyder was too loyal to the money. He wouldn't put in guys who were better than Gobert in that situation because Gobert was the star, right? And I think that was a mistake, and ultimately that was their downfall in this series. I mean, right, Terrence Mann had 39, Trevor, in game. Terrence Mann, 39 points, incredible. A second-year player. He shot 70% from 3. He couldn't miss from the corner. Reggie Jackson, by the way, this is my last point. I pointed him out earlier, Trevor, in a last podcast or 2 podcasts ago. I need to point him out again. He has stepped up so big, and it's consistent, Trevor. This is some of the best basketball of his career. Back to his glory days in Detroit, maybe even better. Just shooting so efficiently. 10 of 16, 27 points in Game 6. I believe tonight against the Suns, Trevor, I believe he had around 25. It was something around that
24.
Number. Yeah, 24 points. He played really well. And I really want to shout him out because he was sensational, not only tonight or against the Suns, but against the Utah Jazz in nearly every game. So I needed to point him out because he stepped up big time.
I totally agree with you on Reggie Jackson. He actually had build off your point there, Ryan. Reggie Jackson had a 50-40-90 shooting series against Utah. 50 from the field, 40 from the 3, 90 from the free throw line. So that is elite. Yeah. Not as good as actually I'll leave that.
Don't even say it.
60, 50, 100 is not bad either. But 50, 40, 90 from Reggie Jackson is absolutely fantastic. And the Clippers, it's weird because when you have 2 guys like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, 2 stars, it's rare to see the role players step up as consistently as the Clippers role players have stepped up. Reggie Jackson's been huge for them in this playoff run. Marcus Morris has been huge. They've gotten great production from Terrence Mann. Luke Kennard has stepped up off the bench. I mean, they have multiple guys that have been able to provide offense for them. And again, I want to highlight Tyronn Lue because I think he deserves a lot of credit, and he also gets a lot of criticism. You know, he rode LeBron's coattails. He was down 0-2 against the Mavericks. Like, should he be fired? And this guy pushed all the right buttons, made all the right adjustments, and now he's gotten his Clippers to the conference finals. And obviously, we'll talk about the game today. We'll talk about my Suns a little bit more, but Tyronn Lue deserves a lot of credit, and Paul George also deserves a lot of credit because he's gotten a lot of flack for previous playoff performances as well.
Yeah, I think bringing up Ty Lue is really good here, Trevor. And this goes to a larger point with this entire Clippers organization. When they went down 2-0 to Dallas, we gave them flack. We kind of disrespected them a little bit, and deservedly so, right? Because all we saw was them lose early last postseason in the bubble and then go down 2-0 to Dallas again this year. And we thought it was same old Clippers. But boy, have we been proven wrong, right? I mean, they've come back from 2-2-0 deficits now. And Trevor, honestly, you know, this could segue into our next segment here, talking about the Clippers and the Suns. I wouldn't be surprised if they came back from another 2-0 deficit in this next series. I really think that they've shown a lot of mental fortitude, and I think that even if they don't win the NBA championship, even if they don't even make it to the finals, I think that they've proven a lot of people wrong. And I think that they've shown that they can overcome obstacles, they can overcome, you know, adversity, you know, substantial hurdles, and I think it's something worth noting because we didn't think they were able to do that. So, yeah, I think crediting Ty Lue and that entire team is you know, necessary.
100%. So I guess, are we segueing into
I think so. If you're good with that, unless you have anything else to add about this first series, we can go into the Suns Clippers series.
Why would I talk about the discount Suns when I can talk about the real Suns? And boy, oh boy, did my Phoenix Suns show up today, Ryan. I'm going to take this away here for a minute or two.
Don't worry about it. Go ahead.
There's a lot to unpack from this game, but I think what's most amazing is, and this is what the Suns have been doing all year. The Suns just find new ways to surprise me, and it always ends up being in the best possible way. Cameron Payne was fantastic today. He stepped up big time for Chris Paul. 9 assists, 1 turnover, gave us 11 points. But DeAndre Ayton had a solid game. Crowder, Bridges, they all played solid. But Devin Armani Booker and Ryan laughed at me on this podcast for saying shades of Kobe. And there's shades of Kobe there. There's a reason why Chris Paul came to Phoenix. I've made that point very clear. But Devin Booker today put together probably one of the best, I think it was actually the best all-around performance in his career.
Oh, okay.
This was the best game Devin Booker has ever played. 40 points, 13 rebounds, 11 assists. And Ryan gives Booker a lot of flack. He doesn't pass the ball. He's a ball hog. His assist numbers are so low. Well, I told Ryan, we don't need Devin Booker to pass the ball. But today we did, because he ran the point guard a lot today. And when Cameron Payne was in the game, he would still, I'd say, split the ball carrying duties with Cam. And when Cameron Payne was out of the game, Devin Booker was the one. And what's so amazing about this performance is it's like a LeBron-esque performance. In the first half, he got the guys involved, right? He only had 11 points at halftime. I think he had 5 or 6 assists at halftime as well. 5 for 10 from the field. So pretty pedestrian scoring-wise. But then in the second half, when the Clippers made their run in that third quarter, a 16-2 run, they got up by 6 late in the third. Devin Booker, I think he went on a 16 or 18-point run by himself. He scored the Suns like next 16 points.
My gosh.
And that's what the great players do. The great players can take over games when they want to take over games. And that's exactly what Devin Booker did today. He took over this basketball game. He controlled the pace of the game. He was hitting everything. He was getting to his spots. And we gave Tyronn Lue a lot of credit for his adjustments. He didn't make the necessary adjustments in game today. I felt like they tried blitzing Booker. It didn't really work. You know, actually, I take that back. I actually felt like Devin Booker I thought Devin Booker just put together a masterpiece.
Yeah.
They threw different bodies at him. They threw Man at him. They threw Beverly at him. They threw Reggie Jackson at him. They tried blitzing him. They tried dropping on him. None of their coverages were working against Devin Booker today. And also, I think DeAndre Ayton, and this is always a really good sign, when you force the other team to adjust to how you're playing. DeAndre Ayton forced the Clippers to start Zubats instead of Marcus Morris in that second half because DeAndre Ayton was just absolutely dominating the paint. So I think that's a very good sign. Ayton had another solid game, 20 and 9, 10 for 14 from the field, did all the right things. I thought his pick and roll coverage was pretty good. Wasn't perfect. There were a couple times where he didn't get out enough on the 3-point shot, but that's okay. He's not perfect. I felt like he did a pretty good job for the most part. And yeah, the Phoenix Suns are just their offensive chemistry is rare. I look back to maybe Golden State when they had Kevin Durant, Curry, Clay, that offensive chemistry, their ability to just all get in on the party, their ability to create shots for each other. The Phoenix Suns, their offense this year it's the best in the NBA, and it's one of the best I've ever seen. They're just their ability to move the ball. They were third in the NBA in team assists per game. Today they had 31 on 49 shots. It's just wonderful to watch. I'm kind of like stumbling here in my words, but it's just wonderful to watch my Phoenix Suns right now.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
How crazy would it be for me to say, you guys remind me of the last year's Miami Heat in the playoffs? Is that crazy to say? Everyone getting involved.
It's not.
People shooting the lights out of the stadium, a lot of passing, a lot of assists, great team defense. It just reminds me of that.
We're better than last year's Miami, but there's definitely similarities there. I would agree with you.
Yeah.
There's definitely, there are similarities. Last year's Miami is a very good comparison. I think to even more of an extent, I think we've taken it a level above what Miami did last year.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, quite possibly. And I don't want to say one way or the other because I was a big fan of Miami Heat. And look, if I'm speaking from an objective standpoint, I need to be a big fan of the Phoenix Suns. Because look, they're doing what the Miami Heat did last year. And I have to love that brand of basketball. I've always loved it. And I have to give credit where credit's due. Because look, this team they're playing has more talent. Kawhi's out right now, so maybe not. But when Kawhi's there, they have more talent substantially, I might even say. But the Phoenix Suns are still the better team. With Kawhi there, even if Chris Paul's out, they're still the better team. You watch the way this team plays, Trevor, and, for all their missteps on the defensive end.
No,
I'm not talking about their defense. My point is I'm not talking about their defense. Their offense, Trevor, it's gotten to the point where you cannot defend it. There's just you put Milwaukee, you put Philly.
You have to hope they miss.
You can't defend it. And you know what I heard? The start of the game, Trevor. The announcers were talking about how Chris Paul wasn't there. And I believe it was Mark Jackson who said, no. Chris Paul's here. Chris Paul's in the building. And they 100%. Panned to Devin Booker. They panned to Cameron Payne. And you know what? I 100% agree.
100%.
Because Chris Paul not only has changed this team leadership-wise. He has changed this team. He has changed the players to playing like him. And you saw that today. Cameron Payne, there were some times where Cameron Payne and Devin Booker, I was like, was that Chris Paul? I'm looking at these passes.
Their passing was incredible.
Booker gets into the paint. There's 3 guys collapsing on him. There were a few times he reverted to the old Devin Booker. He took a wild shot. There were maybe a handful of times in the first half where I saw that.
In the first half, yes.
But the majority of the game, I'm watching him, he's kicking out and finding guys me as a viewer don't even see. I mean, I certainly don't always see the guy he's throwing to on the left wing when he's driving on the right side of the basket. And these passes, Trevor, are consistent and they're sensational. And Chris Paul, after he retires, I said, these Suns, they'll take a step back. And, maybe they will. I still think they might. But I can no longer say that they will be a low-end playoff team when Chris Paul leaves because, look, this team has learned from Chris Paul. This team has become 100%. What Chris Paul is as a player. And it's just great to see that. Just like Miami became what Jimmy Butler was last year. They became Jimmy Butler as a team. Selfless, a great,
tough,
grindy, defensive-minded team. Just like the Suns have become a pass-first, selfless style offense and a gritty, defensive team who doesn't turn the ball over. Now, obviously, there were some missteps in the first half, turnover-wise, Trevor. I think there were at least, I want to say, 5 or 6 turnovers in the first half.
There were.
But they only had one.
On the game.
They only had one, I think, in the second half. It was and that's just exactly what I would come to expect out of this team now, Trevor. I mean, I don't even know. I think that it's just the mark of a changed organization. And Trevor, you and I talk about culture all the time, and I don't want to overplay it, but you just look at what it's done for the Phoenix Suns organization.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to affect this team for years to come.
Absolutely.
Even if Ayton leaves in the offseason, even if Bridges leaves in the offseason, the culture's not going to change. The culture's not going to go away. This is imprinted in the organization. And this is how organizations build for success for many years. The culture stays the way it is right now. And I think with Chris Paul, he's done that for this team. And I think that James Jones deserves all the credit for making that trade. I think he made that trade with, scrubs that he traded too. I think TJ Warren and someone else were who he traded to get the pieces to get Chris Paul. I forget exactly.
He gave up Oubre and Ricky Rubio.
Yeah, but I think didn't Warren also facilitate it in some way? Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe he just dumped
Warren was from before the bubble. Or that was Warren was from the season before. That was remember the year we got Ricky Rubio.
Okay.
The year we got Ricky Rubio, that was also the Warren year. So that was the year before Chris.
Because regardless, he's done wonders with this team, and I just wanted to shout that out as well. But before I hand it off to you, Trevor, I know I've talked a lot, so I apologize. But
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Like the series is going to be hotly contested. I think the Suns will win it, but the Clippers are playing great basketball. It's going to be back and forth.
They played good
again.
Today.
They're going to probably go down 0-2 like they always do. It seems to be what the Clippers like doing this year. I don't know why. But it seems to work for them. And to me, their one change they need to make is they need Marcus Morris to get going. And like I watched him today, Trevor, 3 for 11. He was cooking in that last series against Utah, most of the games. And in Dallas, he was playing really well, and he did not play well today. He's going to have to step up. And I need Luke Kennard to play tighter defense on the wing. He was letting guys shoot wide open threes a lot in the second and third quarters, and that needs to change. So they just need to tighten up a few things. But, I mean, I don't know. They looked fine. DeMarcus Cousins gave him a good boost. Paul George looked great. So I think that they have the potential to win this series, but you can't bet against a team like Phoenix who's as hot as they are. Just like you couldn't bet against Miami last year.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, that was a really good Suns analysis. One of your better ones, I will say, Ryan. You kind of nailed that. I'm gonna build off your Chris Paul point, and I'm also gonna go back to Cameron Payne here in a second.
Oh, yeah.
It's very rare in today's NBA to see a level of selflessness that the Phoenix Suns have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not easy. It's not easy getting yelled at by Chris Paul every day in practice. And Mikal Bridges, I listened to a podcast interview on Duncan Robinson's NBA podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And Bridges goes, like he'll get after you, but he'll also reward you when you play well. And here's the key. Here's the reason why it works so well between him and Chris Paul and everyone else. It's a two-way coaching job. Like Chris will get on them, but they'll get on Chris, and Chris likes it. Chris likes when they give it back to him just as much as when Chris dishes it out. And I think that's what makes that work. Mm-hmm. I saw a video on Twitter today when Chris was in Houston, and it was a playoff game. They were in a timeout, and he was kind of talking at James Harden. He's like, "Hey, man, like you couldn't really read exactly what he was saying, but clearly whatever he was saying was annoying Harden." And at the very end, right when he's like done, coaching Harden up, goes out for a fist bump. And Harden slaps his arm away in the huddle. And that to me is the reason why that partnership didn't work. They ended up trading away Chris Paul. And now Chris Paul comes here to a bunch of young guys, and the young guys embrace him. And that's not easy to do, but look what it's done. They're in the Western Conference Finals. They're the best team left in these playoffs. The Phoenix Suns are probably the betting favorites right now to win the title. It's all fallen into place. And before you rebuttal what I said, Ryan, I want to talk about Cameron Payne and highlight him.
Sure.
This guy has seen the highs and lows, mainly the lows of being a professional athlete. He's known as the dancing bench guy in Oklahoma City, and then he goes to the G League.
Yep.
Chicago Bulls, they cut him after 2 practices. The famous quote was, "The only reason we didn't cut him after the first one is because we thought he was nervous, but we just knew he was that bad. We just knew he was bad." And then I think he played for a brief stint in Cleveland. And then gets demoted to the G League again.
Yep.
And then plays in China. And then the bubble rolls around, and the Phoenix Suns were the one team that offered him a contract to play in the bubble. And the rest is history. And I'm just so proud of the way Cameron Payne has improved his game. And Mark Jackson said it on the telecast today. He said, Cameron Payne's improvements as a player are one of the best he's ever seen at the guard position. He said he's never seen a player turn his career around like Cameron Payne has, going from China to starting in a Western Conference Finals game and being effective and having 9 assists to 1 turnover in 30 minutes of action. Unbelievable job by Cameron Payne. But the bigger point here is the unique selflessness of the Phoenix Suns embracing a Chris Paul and letting a 36-year-old man coach you up. And it's just very rare to see in today's NBA that kind of I keep using the word selflessness, but that kind of just like letting it all go to win, like ignoring everything else and all you want to do is win.
It's that style of team play that you don't really see on a lot of teams anymore, Trevor. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, Miami got bounced in the first round in 4 games this year, but I'm telling you what Jimmy Butler's done for that organization is going to stick for years. And I think that they might get a couple players in the offseason and come back better than ever. That's what Chris Paul's done to Phoenix. And I really, really love these types of players. I have a lot of respect for both of them because they change organizations and they change
Mm-hmm.
fan bases for years in the future in a positive way. And I think that they're always going to be criminally underrated. I really do.
Criminally.
I mean, seriously, like, look, Chris Paul, don't make no mistake about it. He should not have won MVP this year, and I'm glad he didn't. But it's because you cannot tangibly tell me what he did for the team. You just can't, right? It's not something you can see, on a stat sheet. It's not something you can show me on a piece of paper or in a video. It's just something you have to kind of observe when you're there if you were with the team all year, or it's something you had to hear or listen
Mm-hmm.
to from the team, mentality and stuff like that. I really, really think that what he's done is great. And I wanted to say one thing though. This isn't related to the Suns. I've said what I had to say on them. I just want to say that Chris Paul and Harden, it was very interesting what you just said, because I actually think that James Harden, maybe, Trevor, they didn't get along. And there were rumors of that. But he learned from Chris Paul. And you can see it in his game, Trevor. You can see it in his game. Are you telling me, have you seen the transformation of James Harden in the last 4 or 5 years? Do you remember James Harden a few years back, Trevor? He did not pass the ball a third as much as he does now.
Mm-hmm.
He passes the ball with accuracy and precision and consistency better than almost anyone in the league.
It helps when you have Kevin Durant on your team, but I agree with you.
No, but even in Houston, like, they were going to make the playoffs this year with Harden there. They were going to. Maybe they would have been a 6 or 7 or 8 seed.
Hard to say.
My point is he learned a lot from Chris Paul. Is my only point. He became a more selfless player, in my opinion, from what he used to be. And I really respect that. So I just wanted to say that there, because they might have had their disagreements, but Harden still learned from him. So I just wanted to point that out, at least in my opinion. I don't know if you have anything else to say.
The only rebuttal I have to that is I slightly question if Harden had that ability to give the ultimate sacrifice to win. I still think Harden had a little too much ego in that relationship.
Oh, yeah, whereas
the Suns, and Harden's more proven, obviously, so he's probably like, why is this guy that's worse than, like telling me what to do? Whereas the Suns guys, they've all been not losers, but they've all lost their whole career. So I think it's a different relationship. I'm just so incredibly happy with how the Suns have been able to play for each other. And Mikal Bridges described it as a college team where they genuinely love each other's successes. They cheer on each other's successes. And you can just see it in their game. Final thing I'd like to say about this before we move on is the Suns are making an absolute mockery of the NBA awards this year. And I'm going to list off about 4 or 5.
Not just
MVP, ridiculous. I mean, the way Chris Paul played against Denver.
No.
Not saying Jokic didn't deserve it. But Chris Paul made a mockery of that award in that series. All NBA, Devin Booker today made an absolute mockery of leaving him off the All NBA team. Defensive, all defensive team, Matisse Thybulle fouling Kevin Huerter on the most important 3-point shot attempt of their season, maybe costing them their season. That's especially how Bridges played when Bridges was the main defender on Paul George today. Bridges made a mockery of that. And Monty Williams has made an absolute mockery of the Coach of the Year award. I'm sorry, Tom Thibodeau did not deserve it. You're seeing that now. The Phoenix Suns have won 8 straight playoff games. I don't know how often that happens, but 8 straight games won in the playoffs. You beat the defending champions. You sweep this year's phony MVP. And then you come into game 1 without your leader, Chris Paul, and you play a terrific game and win game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. The Phoenix Suns have made an absolute mockery of these NBA awards, and I'm glad. They're giving it to the NBA right now, and the NBA is going to have to live with a small market finals matchup most likely, unless the Clippers can pull the series out. But I'm happy my Phoenix Suns are sticking it to the NBA a little bit, and the voters for all these awards, because it's a travesty what happened to my Suns during this award season.
Yeah, look, I mean, I disagree with you on the MVP. I agree with you on like a few other things, like Booker maybe should have made third team All NBA. But there's a lot of other players like Jason Tatum who didn't make it, which is ridiculous. Donovan Mitchell didn't make it. Point being,
Right.
the NBA does have a problem with awards. I personally think that playoffs should be included. I just do, because they're such an important part of the game, and it changes people's opinion of the players and the coaches so much.
Right.
That
Right.
I don't know how you just ignore that part of the season with these awards.
Totally.
I don't like it. I don't like it. But I do think Thibodeau deserved it. But we don't have to get into that. I think there's a lot of coaches who deserved it. Thibodeau, Williams, and McMillan.
Nate McMillan.
All three of them.
We'll get to that right now. But go
yeah.
ahead.
So Trevor, we can transition into this actually, but before we get into actually the Hawks, I did want to talk about.
Bucks or Bucks.
Well, I want to
Nets.
talk about what happened with the Bucks and the Nets, if that's okay.
I know we don't. Should.
Just for a couple minutes, because look, I'm going to be brief here because we have to get to the Hawks Bucks series and our predictions for that. But look, Kevin Durant, he's the best player in the world, Trevor. And I don't want to hear anything else about it. He's the best player in the NBA right now. He is. And by the way, he committed to play in Tokyo, which I would not I would not want to play against Kevin Durant, who's angry.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so Kevin Durant's playing along with Booker and Damian Lillard. Oh, it's going to be absolutely brutal.
Bradley Beal and Tatum also.
Bradley Beal and Tatum. The United States is going to have the best team it's had, since 2012. Not like there's been that many Olympics, but they're going to have an unstoppable team. So that'll be fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Durant's going to be playing angry, I think. So that'll be interesting. He's going to put up ridiculous numbers. But anyway, he gave it his all in this series, Trevor. I don't know if I've ever seen a guy just visibly give as much effort as he did in this series. And what I love about it is people have clowned him like we clown the Clippers. He's gone to super teams, right? And he goes the easiest place there is to win title. And it's true, he does. Ever since he left OKC, and I've criticized him at length for it. But I got to give credit, Trevor. He tried to prove to people that he could do it without the stars. And he was so close. He was 2 shoe sizes away from proving everyone wrong. He
Literally.
really was. And
literally. No,
let me tell you, if you guys haven't watched this Game 7, go watch it, or at least watch the fourth quarter and overtime. It was one of the best.
Go watch both the Game 7s, honestly.
It was one of the best Game 7s I've ever seen in my lifetime. It was absolutely fantastic. And Kevin Durant and Trevor, I believe he put up, what did he put up in this game? 48 points. Just gave it his all. He was amazing. And I don't want any Kevin Durant slander. I don't want people disrespecting him. I don't want people saying he wasn't good enough. I don't want people saying he's a ring chaser. He might be. But the guy's the best player in the world right now, coming off an Achilles injury. And he almost single-handedly brought his team to the Eastern Conference Finals over a very good team, very good Milwaukee Bucks team. I also wanted to say that I don't want people faulting James Harden either. James Harden might have made a mistake of taking too many shots, but the guy could barely jog, much less run at a full sprint. The guy was not even 80%, I don't even think, in Game 7. He was not himself. And when people go to blame him, I want to say, you go try to play with a hamstring injury where you got hurt a week and a half ago.
Yeah, we have to run.
It's impossible. Those injuries take like a month to heal fully. You see guys in the NFL, Trevor, re-injure hamstrings all the time because they come back too early.
Mm-hmm.
Harden came back too early, and he was playing 50-plus minutes in back-to-back games, or 46-plus minutes in back-to-back games. I'm sorry. So I don't want to hear any criticism of Harden. It's not his fault that he had a bum hamstring. He gave it his all. I do want to say Joe Harris really, really disappointed me in this series. The guy was abysmal. He averaged like 6 points in the series. And when you're getting paid $70 million, playing 45 minutes a game, 43 minutes a game, and just you got to make your threes. $70 million to hit threes, and you can't do it. Like, you've been a deadeye your entire career. You need to step up and hit your threes like you were in the previous series against Boston. I thought that was just absolutely unacceptable. I think if you're going to blame someone on that team, and I don't even think you need to because they were so undermanned, you blame Joe Harris. Blake Griffin gave it his all. I loved the effort. The crowd saw it. They kept giving him standing ovations. The effort was out there. I don't want to hear people saying he was ring chasing. He might have been, but he was giving 100%, 110% effort that entire series. So I don't really want to hear any disrespect to most of that Nets team because they gave it their all when they were down a lot. undermanned, a superstar and a half, basically. But credit to Milwaukee. They got it done, against all
They did.
odds, seemingly. Giannis got it done, and we'll see if he can get it done and go to the NBA Finals and get over that final hump that he has not been able to get over yet. But credit to the Bucks. They pulled it out.
I do want to give the Bucks a lot of credit. I will talk about Kevin Durant real quick here.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant was just I'm running out of adjectives, but Kevin Durant was
sensational.
It was exquisite, sensational. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
He put a team on his back, and we talked about, Brooklyn's one issue is going to be injuries because of their lack of depth, and that's just what happens when you have three superstars on your team. Kyrie goes down. Harden's honestly a shell of himself. Harden did not look healthy when he played in this series. And Kevin Durant honestly had to do it all. I mean, it was Brooklyn's offense in games 5, 6, and 7 was ISO offense. We're going to give the ball to Kevin Durant, and we're just gonna get out of the way and let him go get a bucket. And Kevin Durant was magnificent. I think he 49 in game 5, 48 in game 7. Just an unbelievable. And Ryan, you're right. He is the best player in the world right now. Just unbelievable performance from him. I want to give Milwaukee, though, a ton of credit because Milwaukee deserves credit. And I want to highlight a couple of guys that they brought in. PJ Tucker was huge for them in this series. Kevin Durant's Kevin Durant. You're not going to stop him. PJ Tucker knows that. But PJ Tucker made it hard on Kevin Durant. And you could see the physicality of PJ Tucker's defense take a toll on Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, it's what happened in overtime. Kevin Durant was dead. He had no gas. He had nothing left. 5 more minutes of basketball. He just had absolutely nothing left. And I think partially was due to the physicality PJ Tucker plays. He is banging up against you. He is, physical with you. He has his hands on you. And he's a big guy. Backing him down takes a lot of energy. Going up against him one-on-one takes a lot of energy. And he's going to foul you a couple times. And he did.
He's not afraid to.
Exactly. He did a great job wearing Kevin Durant out. Obviously, Durant still went off, but PJ Tucker deserves a lot of credit in the series. Also, I want to give Drew Holiday a lot of credit. And people are going to look at the stat line. He shot 5 for 23 in game 7. I understand that, but he made timely shots. His defense and his floor general and leadership and just overall experience has been great for this Milwaukee team. You and I both really liked the move in the offseason, Ryan, when they got Drew Holiday to replace a guy like Eric Bledsoe. And it seems to be paying dividends right now because Milwaukee swept the Heat and then they beat the title favorites in Brooklyn in back-to-back series.
Yep.
And I want to give Giannis a lot of credit too because Giannis matched Kevin Durant in game 7. Kevin Durant went for 48. Giannis went for 40. And obviously Giannis got a little bit more help from his role players than Kevin Durant did. But I do want to give Giannis a lot of credit. He was aggressive in game 7. He hit a couple threes. His free throw shooting is still a big problem. He airballed 2 free throws. But outside of his free throw shooting, I thought he played a terrific game 7. And the Milwaukee Bucks, this series is going to go a long way. Ryan and I will talk a little bit about the Hawks Atlanta or the Hawks Bucks series here in a bit, but I think this series against Brooklyn is going to pay dividends for Milwaukee because now they believe they can beat anybody, and I think they're gonna see a different. The Hawks are just not on the same level as Brooklyn, and I think Milwaukee knows that. And I think the mental side of winning the series is just as important as the physical winning as well. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
the mental edge the Bucks get from knocking off Brooklyn in a game 7 on the road, I think is going to be huge for them.
I mean, Trevor, without a doubt. I mean, I think mental fortitude's the wrong word, but just like being able to grow mentally and have more mental confidence right in your head going into these games and coming off of these series pays dividends. I mean, the Clippers are a perfect example. Coming back from 2-2-0 deficits, I'll tell you right now, Trevor, they're not sweating losing game 1 to the Suns, and they shouldn't be.
No,
just like the Bucks won't be sweating going into this Hawks series, as they shouldn't be. They just beat the Nets, who, while undermanned, I mean, they don't care if they're undermanned. They still beat the people who everyone thought were going to be the title favorites. I do want to say one or two more things before we move on. Giannis was exhausted, which was interesting to me. Like, he was just exhausted in the second quarter, which was really strange. They had to call a timeout because he was so tired. So that was kind of weird. Like, I just didn't know why he was so tired in the second quarter. I know he plays a very physical, high-energy brand of basketball, but I don't think that's normal. So that was something I thought was worth pointing out. I don't know if that's going to be an issue later on in the playoffs or in other games, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a little, it was like kind of strange. It was just, it was not normal. And second, Kevin Durant was exhausted. You're right. I want to say it's very sad because you can see exactly why the Nets lost this series. At the end of that game, Trevor, the final possession of overtime, Durant has the ball. He gives it to Harden with, I think, under 10 seconds left. Harden takes one dribble and gives it right back to Durant. When Durant passes it to Harden, he's saying, man, I have nothing left. Like, he did not want the ball now. If he wanted the ball, he wasn't passing it. He wanted
Right.
that. He didn't want that ball in that final possession. He knew he didn't have the energy.
Mm-hmm.
I think he knew. And I think when he gave it to Harden, he's like, please take the final shot. Give it to your other superstar. Normally, that's a great play. Great pass to make. Harden would take that, no question. Harden gave it right back to him because Harden doesn't trust himself shooting with a bum leg. And I wouldn't either, I wouldn't either. And it's just tough, Trevor. It's tough to see just what went down there because Durant had to do it all himself and Harden just, he couldn't do it for him. Yeah, and you could just tell. It was just tragic because Durant had no energy. He needed someone else to step up for him, and the other superstar was just too injured to be able to do it. So I don't know. That was just kind of a moment for me where I'm like, man, like what could have been? And I think it'll be interesting to see where the Nets go from here if they all come back next year. Hopefully they do, all these stars, because I personally, as a fan, would have liked to see them at full strength. I think that would have been entertaining, at least for me, because
Mm-hmm.
my team's not in the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs. It would have been fun. So I hope we get to see them at full strength in the playoffs next year, or maybe even 2 years. I don't think it's going to last much longer. I think they have 1, maybe 2 years at most left with these three. As most super teams do like this, they don't have a long time. They're not typically, longevity. The longevity of these super teams is typically not very high. But we'll see what happens. It was just something I saw at the end of that game, which was kind of
I
disappointing.
do. I do want to say one thing on James Harden and Kyrie Irving,
Yeah,
and why I think James Harden deserves more of the blame here than you think. James
really.
Harden. James Harden needs to prioritize basketball, and his injury it's his fault. It's a non-contact injury.
Whoa.
It's an injury from not properly training. It's the same thing with Anthony Davis. James Harden did not. You look at what LeBron does to take care of his body every year. He spends millions
Oh,
of dollars taking care of his body. James Harden's walking into this year looking fat, him going to strip clubs, and he didn't prioritize his body. He probably wasn't flexible enough. He didn't properly train for this season. And when you throw yourself in cold turkey, you're exposing yourself to injury risk. And again, a soft tissue injury, non-contact, pulled hamstring, that is generally more avoidable if you are prioritizing your body, prioritizing your health, and prioritizing basketball. I understand accidents happen, but I think James Harden needs to get back in better shape this offseason
okay.
and really, really focus in on basketball. Same thing with Kyrie Irving.
Okay, that's true.
And here's what I really appreciate what Kyrie Irving does off the court. I admire his belief in the social justice issues. I admire what he believes in. And, to a certain extent, I agree with it. And to a certain extent, I don't agree with it. But I admire the fact that he cares about very important things in this world. But I might argue it's harming his basketball a little bit because it's hard to just take games off and then throw yourself into the thick of things. It prevents your team from maximizing its ability to like
Perform.
perform. It hampers your ability to grow chemistry,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also hard on the body. It's hard to just come into a very physical thing after just taking nights off. So
What?
I think Kyrie and Harden really need to prioritize their bodies and prioritize basketball a little bit more.
Mm.
Kyrie Irving, I'm more worried about Harden than Kyrie because I think Kyrie's Kyrie, right? He's never going to
Well,
change who he is. But Harden needs to give LeBron a call and be like, "Hey man, I need to take care of my body like you. And it was visible. Harden looked heavier this year, and I'm going to call him out for that. He looked heavier. He looked a little bit more out of shape,
he looked better than
and
he ever had.
he looked heavier this year, and he got hurt. And I think those injuries are partially his fault. Same thing with Anthony Davis.
I
Training,
just
off-season preparation, dieting, whatever it takes. When you're getting paid that kind of money, you
here,
need to do it. It's what LeBron does every year.
here's the thing, and I'll make this brief, but look, you're right. These players, their bodies, their sport needs to be number one. When you're getting paid hundreds of millions like some of these guys are, you got to make this priority one, priority two, priority three, priority four, and priority five. That has to be the way it is if you're getting paid that much money. And, you have to at least care a little bit. So I 100% agree he needs to be in better shape. Harden needs to be in better shape. Kyrie needs to get his head in the game during the season. Do whatever you want. Fight for whatever issues you want in the offseason. It's what LeBron James does. LeBron James does not take days off for his body, for outside issues. While he may,
Right.
talk about other issues outside of basketball, he does not,
miss games for them.
Yeah, and he doesn't, compromise his body and its health for him. So I think that that's a very important distinction. And, I don't think that you can – the thing is, I don't think you can blame those injuries on their lack of fitness because –
I definitely think you can.
Because here's the thing.
Definitely can.
Perfect. Look, specifically the Harden hamstring injury, because you can point to any player in any sport. Julio Jones hurt his hamstring last year, Trevor. Julio Jones is one of the most fit in football shape players in the NFL.
I'm not saying it's consistent across every. I'm not saying it's the case with that, but there was it was clear.
Yes,
that Harden
I agree.
looked heavier this year, and he needs to prioritize his conditioning. He needs to stretch more, get flexible, get on a diet. He needs to prioritize his body like LeBron James does. That is my point here. And injuries like that are much more preventable.
I agree that he's in better shape. I just have a hard time blaming like his hamstring injury.
I should say blaming. I should say that you definitely increase your risk.
You can
by
reduce
not
your
prioritizing
risk.
your
Yes,
health.
okay,
exactly.
That's fine.
I don't want to blame
because
injuries happen. I totally agree with you. Cool. Go Bucks.
But yeah, Trevor, I mean, if we're all done with that, we can move on to a quick prediction between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Atlanta Hawks, who made it to the Eastern Conference Finals today.
I'll go real fast on this.
Yeah, you go real quick.
Bucks in 5.
Okay. Bucks in
5.
five.
Atlanta's been fantastic. Don't get me wrong. Bucks in 5. Go ahead.
Trevor, I said Phoenix Suns will, I don't know if I said it straight on the podcast, but I'll say it. The Phoenix Suns are winning the Clippers series in 6 games. I think that, and you know what I also think? I think the Atlanta Hawks pulled this series out. There's just something special about the Hawks right now.
Right.
I don't know what it is, but when your star player goes 5 for 23 and you still beat the Philadelphia 76ers away in Game 7.
Can't wait to talk about the 76ers.
I think that, man, you got to give some credit to the team. And I think this team is really good. I think this team is building confidence as they go. And I think that they beat the Bucks in 7 games. I think this series goes the distance. And I think the Bucks just won't have enough in the tank. I just don't. I think the Bucks are a fantastic team. They're the better team on paper, better defensive team. The Hawks, man, they just have a little bit of magic about them. I don't know. I think that, I knew it was going to be a tough series against Philly. I knew Philly would have a tough time. I said Philly in 7. But Atlanta won Game 7. And listen, I didn't know Ben Simmons was going to pass up a wide open dunk in the 4th quarter. I didn't think he was that bad, but turns out I was wrong about that. But I don't want to bet against Atlanta here. I think that I really love their shooting. Their defense isn't very good, but they just shoot the lights out, Trevor. And while they might not match up well, I mean, I think that teams have proven they can hit threes against Milwaukee. Brooklyn proved it. I think it can be done. They have the shooters. They have Clint Capella for interior defense. It can be done. They can beat Milwaukee. I think they will. While I do think Milwaukee can win this in 7, I'm going to go with Atlanta. I think Atlanta has the momentum and the magic right now. And I think Trae Young, this is his time to shine. This is it. This is his moment. And I don't think he's going to pass it up.
I guess we'll disagree there. I agree, though, with one thing you said. I think this is a bad matchup for Atlanta.
Yeah.
More so, I more so think it's a good matchup for Milwaukee.
Sure.
I like Milwaukee's better, deeper, and they have length at every position, and I think that's going to cause Atlanta some problems in this series. With that being said, Ryan, we're going to talk about the Philadelphia Sixers disaster class today. That was honestly a horrendous performance. But yeah, take it away. Actually, go ahead. I don't know what you have to say.
Trevor, look. like I said just a second ago, I knew the series was going to go the distance. At least I had a feeling it would. I know Philly. I
You
think
got that right. You got that
I
part
think
right.
it's the only thing I got right in in the second round of these playoffs. Trevor. Look, like I said, they've been surprising, but Philly tends to play down to competition to me, particularly when they play away games. Although they did struggle at home this series.
Yeah, that was surprising.
They've notoriously been really good at home and bad away, so this is a little bit weird. But regardless, I thought that this would go the distance, and it did. Again, I didn't count on Joel Embiid. Look, their stars just didn't show up when it mattered. Seth Curry was honestly the most consistent player in this series. While Joel Embiid put up big numbers, Trevor, Seth Curry did too for the most part. And Joel Embiid, Trevor, he disappeared in the second half of Game 5. He disappeared in the second half of Game 6, in my opinion. He didn't do much for me other than getting John Collins' face behind the basket, which I thought was really funny, by the way. Like, what are you going to do? Like, why are you shoving Joel Embiid? The guy's a monster. It's like when Booker got in Jokic's face. Like, don't try that. Anyway,
What do you mean don't try that? He was standing up for his teammate.
I know, but then Jokic just, stared him down. He was like, yeah, what are you going to do to me? Why stand up to Joel Embiid, dude? Like, go ahead.
I talked to Jokic today. He told me the weather in Cancun is fantastic. But continue.
Oh, man. And I talked to Jokic today, too, and he said, how's that MVP trophy? Oh, my bad. Anyway, there's only one MVP trophy, and he's got it. Anyway, my point is...
He's not winning a ring, but...
My point is Philly was just... They choked. Look, Joel Embiid is great. He's fantastic. He's such a versatile big man. I even think he might be a better big man than Jokic. I think he might be. After watching him in this series, even though he struggled, I think he might be better than Jokic. But that's besides the point, because he didn't step up when it mattered most, Trevor. He didn't step up when it mattered most, man. And that's what you need. And you know who else didn't step up? Ben Simmons didn't step up. This guy has been absolutely abysmal. And I bet you right here on this podcast, I would be shocked if he was on the 76ers start next season. He's going to get traded. He'll get traded for not a lot because his value's plummeted and he has a big contract. But he'll go to a smaller market team. He'll go there for, a few picks, maybe a decent bench player. He's gone. They're moving on from him. Doc Rivers said, I don't know, when asked if Ben Simmons is the point guard of the future.
Very interesting.
That's telling. Doc Rivers knows. He's a smart guy. However many faults he might have, he knows his basketball stuff. Ben Simmons he's not right mentally. And I really hope he goes and gets the proper help he needs. I hope he goes to an organization that can support him and help him get his mentality that he used to have back and just be able to shoot free throws at least at a decent clip. Because Trevor, shooting 33% from the line, I mean, that's an all-time low in the NBA playoffs.
It's the worst. It's the worst free throw percentage in NBA postseason history.
Worse than Shaquille O'Neal, Will Chamberlain, anybody, ever. So that's not a shooting form. That's up here. And look, I get people are making fun of him, but I just feel bad for the guy. I really just feel bad for him because he has all the talent in the world, Trevor. And he's just all in his head. So I really hope he figures it out. I think a new change of scenery will help him. Maybe not in the limelight. Philly fans are notoriously pretty brutal. So hopefully,
oh yeah,
a quieter fan base might do him wonders. Not a quieter fan base, a less brutal fan base might do him some wonders. I hope he figures it out. I hope he gets a change of scenery because they're not going to win with him and he's not going to do well with them. So I think it's time that they part ways. But that's why they lost this series, plain and simple.
Ben Simmons is why they lost this series. I'm just going to come out and say it.
Yeah.
Embiid could have been better. Embiid definitely deserves some blame. 8 turnovers from Embiid tonight. That's inexcusable. That's bad. I mean, that is. And Philadelphia's had turnover problems this entire series. They had 17 tonight, which I forgot how many points it led to for Atlanta, but I think it led for like 25 Atlanta points. So Philadelphia's ball security was horrible. But the story of this series is Ben Simmons. And it's clear. After the game, Doc Rivers said it. He didn't say it because he was trying to, protect Ben Simmons from getting a lot of hate. But Doc Rivers came out and said, we can't win with this guy. He said, I don't know. But what I don't know means is, no, I don't believe we can win with him right now. Unless something drastically changes, the way Ben Simmons' game or the way he plays basketball is not good enough for us to win a title. And he's right. Ben Simmons was horrendous in this series. 5 points. What was he? 2 for 4 from the field. He passes up an open dunk for a guy just to get fouled and only make 1 or 2. And Joel Embiid said that after the game. Joel Embiid, this is a quote. He goes, "I'll be honest. I thought the turning point was when I don't know how to say it, is when we had an open shot and we made one free throw." Clearly talking about how Ben Simmons passes up a wide open dunk for Matisse Thybulle, who's not a great free throw shooter. He's not bad, and only makes one. That's a 2 or 3 point, or that's a 1 to 2 point swing right there. And Ryan's right. It's all mental with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I feel bad for him, because I don't think he has any confidence or belief in himself. And I don't know why.
I know.
There's videos of him shooting. There's videos of him raining in threes in an open gym. Like he made 5 in a row in a video of just him shooting around. He clearly can shoot.
Yeah.
He clearly can make free throws. They said in practice, he makes free throws pretty consistently, but it's the pressure of the game. I think it's the past. It's the pressure of the game. And it's like he's in his head about what has happened in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bad way of, being as an athlete. You can't worry about stuff that has already happened and let that affect your future and present outcomes. I think Ben Simmons needs to, I know he had been talking to a sports psychologist. I think he needs to continue with that. I really think he needs to get his head right. And I agree with you, Ryan. And I think Philadelphia is definitely going to be looking to shop him.
Yeah.
But I think it's good for Ben Simmons to get out of a brutal fan environment where he is going to get a lot of negative attention now for the next couple of weeks.
But Trevor, look, we can move on to one last topic in the NBA. And this is something that happened. They kind of flew under the radar, Trevor. I feel like a lot of fans really weren't talking about this as much as I thought they would, because the NBA playoffs are in full swing. But it is noteworthy, and it's yet another good trade, in my opinion, by Sam Presti of OKC. The Oklahoma City Thunder trade for Kemba Walker and the 16th overall pick this year, and a 2025 second rounder kind of throw in for Al Horford, Moses Brown, and a 2023 second rounder. And Trevor, I'm going to give my quick thoughts on this real quick. I know that we might differ on this, but I think this is a good trade for both sides. I think it was a better trade for OKC. I think that OKC is taking on salary because they can afford it. I think they're taking on an extra year of salary, maybe 2 years. I don't know if Kemba has a third-year player option. I believe he has 2 years left in his deal. Al Horford has 1 year left, so they're taking on more salary this year, and obviously another one on the books for next year in exchange for the 16th pick in the draft this year, which was a great trade because not only is Kemba better than Al Horford, but the 16th pick in this year's draft is great because getting another asset this year is just insane by OKC. And whether they flip these picks for a star or not, I don't know. But this draft is deep. And the lottery's on Tuesday, Trevor, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And we will talk about that next week, by the way. But I think he has, Trevor, I think he has 4 top 20 picks, I want to say. I don't think off the top of my head. I think
this season?
Yeah, this year. I think he has 4. Or at least,
oh my goodness, wow.
At least I think it's 4 first-round picks. But regardless, he has a plethora. He has a lot of picks. So a great deal because he got to dump Al Horford, who was sitting at home, for a pick like that, and a guy in Kemba Walker who he's probably going to trade, if not in the offseason, halfway through next year. I mean, he's no doubt going to try to facilitate a deal like he did for a lot of other guys that were on his team. Al Horford sat to go to a team like Boston that he wanted to go back to. He traded Paul George to a place that he wanted to. He traded Chris Paul to a place that he wanted to. He's done that for a lot of guys. He's going to do it for Kemba. And then for Boston, real quick, I don't like they gave up that pick, but I do like that they traded Kemba. I knew it wasn't working. We could see it wasn't working. Kemba wasn't quite the same, and they don't need the scoring. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can score enough, in my personal opinion. They need bench scoring. Kemba wasn't going to come off the bench. He takes too many shots with the starters on the floor. They need a guy who can come in with the bench players and play some with the starters and score. And that guy's Dennis Schroeder, upcoming free agent, perfect addition for Boston. That's who I would target. $15 million a year. I think they have the cap space now. That's who I would target, a player like that. But I don't love that they gave up that first-round pick. I think they could have waited for a little bit of a better offer for Kemba. But regardless, Trevor, I wanted to hear your thoughts, whether you agree with me, disagree with me.
I don't really love the trade for either team. I get the positives of it for both. I do like the part about getting rid of Kemba Walker's salary. He clearly was not the same player this year. And what was he due to make like $38 million a year, $38 million or something like that next year, which is absurd. Dennis Schroeder's an interesting one. I think you'll have to pay him more than 15 a year because he thinks he's worth more than 15 a year. But that's an interesting guy they should pick up. The negative side of this trade for Boston is they don't have a backcourt. I mean, who are their guards now? Peyton Pritchard, Romeo Langford, um, Skylar Mays. Who are these people? These guys belong in China. The Shanghai Sharks have roster spots. That's where they need to be playing right now.
Mm.
So Boston giving up that 16th pick, having no guards. I'm not sure how they're going to get any. Dennis Schroeder's interesting. I think if they get Schroeder, that would be successful. Then this trade becomes a lot more worth it for me. But they're going to have a serious issue with their backcourt next year. And for Oklahoma City, I'm not going to say Sam Presti is overrated. Okay.
Wow.
What I am going to say is the teams this guy has had and blown up is unreal. The team he had with Durant, Harden, and Westbrook. I look back to the team he had, even when it was Westbrook's MVP year. They had guys like Jeremy Grant, Sabonis, Oladipo, Steven Adams. And then they blew that team up. And then they bring in Chris Paul and they trade Chris Paul. They had Paul George and Westbrook, and then they blow that team up. And then they bring in Chris Paul, and now Chris Paul's gone. Oklahoma City is prioritizing like assets for the future, but when are they going to be good? They have no talent on this roster. They have a ton of draft picks, but there's a certain risk. You know, he might have 4 first-round picks now this upcoming draft, but that doesn't mean he's going to hit on any of them. It's likely that he'll hit on one of them. But even if he hits on all 4, the team's going to be so young. The team's going to be, so raw that it's going to take years for them to be even decent. And if the draft picks don't pan out, then for me, it turns into what could have been. Look at the teams he had already built. And I guess that's why he's doing this, because he can clearly pick players. He's great at analyzing talent based on his draft picks and some of these teams he's put together. But my question is, why is he always blowing it up for more draft picks? I just don't understand that aspect of it. I get a rebuild, but this is a rebuild to the next level. I don't know.
You think it's overkill?
It is overkill.
Okay.
That's a good way to put it. I just think it's overkill. And I don't know when this team just, if you look at their roster right now, this team is just horrendously bad. And a bunch of young draft picks isn't going to change anything in the next 3 to 5 years, in my opinion.
Well,
but go ahead.
I mean, I want to say this. It's only been 1 year. People forget. I mean, they made the playoffs last year, Trevor.
True,
I mean,
but they weren't supposed to. That was a rebuild year. They just Chris Paul magic.
I'm just saying. Let's not act like they're so far removed from being relevant.
But look at that team, though, and they do have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
They do,
and that team had guys like Gallinari, Chris Paul, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think they still had Steven Adams.
They did have Steven Adams.
Lou Dort, exactly. Like that's a good team. Look, that team this year, if stayed healthy, probably is also a playoff team. I don't know. It's just so. It's overkill. I think it's a great way of putting it.
Here's the thing: is they're going to accelerate it at the right time. When they hit on a few draft picks, if they do, they're going to recognize. And because they have so many draft picks in the future, Trevor, they're going to trade those draft picks for a really good player in the real NBA.
That's what I think they should do.
They will once they hit on a few. They will once they hit on a couple draft picks, right? So when it's time to flip the switch, they'll flip the switch. That's I think at least that would be what I would do if I was the GM, right? I'd be like, all right, let me hit on a couple players. Be a solid, like a Pelicans level team, right? Team who can't quite make the playoffs, but is close. Then trade for a star to go with any other Shai Gilgeous and whoever else hits in the draft for you, and just go. That's what I would do. I think that's what they're going to try to do. We'll see if it works. I do agree. Maybe he's a little overrated in the sense of everyone just like, whoa, Sam Presti got another pick. Like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Like, I get it. He has a lot of picks. Like, they still have to be good players, right? Like picks are picks. Mm-hmm. You got to hit on the players. So I agree with that. Like we need to see him actually get good teams and not just a lot of picks. But it'll be interesting to see. It was definitely an interesting trade. Timing was also interesting. I think Boston's going to go through a big rebuild with Tatum on the roster. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. But yeah. I think, Trevor, we're going to move on from that, unless you have anything else real quick to add. But if not, yeah, we have one last thing we wanted to talk about, Trevor, and this was not NBA related. This is actually PGA Tour related, and this is, quite a bit different from what we normally talk about on this podcast, but we thought it would be worth talking about because this past weekend, Trevor, finishing up today, was the U.S. Open, and one of the 4 major championships on the PGA Tour. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to talk about this because it was just a great tournament. And Trevor, I wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts on the tournament, the final round? Were you entertained?
I watched a lot of it today. It was a really good final round of golf. I kind of wish everyone didn't collapse early on the back nine. I could probably talk about five players that completely just fell apart. But
Yes.
Henley, Mackenzie Hughes, Bryson DeChambeau shooting 44 on the back nine, Rory McIlroy, Colin Morikawa,
Rory McIlroy. Kepka
Brooks
kind of
Koepka
choked
to a
too.
lesser extent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy for John Rahm. I really am. After what happened at the Memorial, him having to withdraw because of COVID, I'm really happy he won. I think this was a great little redemption story. And he just played beautiful golf today. Shot 67. He rolled in some putts on the back nine, 17 and 18, those two birdie
Yes.
putts, both huge left to right swingers. Those two putts won him the tournament today. And I got to give him a lot of credit. He played fabulous golf. I feel a little bit bad for Louis Oosthuizen, man. He is in it at every major. He's now finished runner-up 6 times in majors, and he's only won
Oh,
one.
brutal.
So he's just so close every single time. And he played really good golf today, too, just kind of hung in there on a really tough Torrey Pines layout. But this today was all about John Rahm. Beautiful golf, fantastic putting. And John Rahm in the past has been criticized for his attitude being a little
Yes.
hot-headed. I think his ability to control his emotions, but still have emotion and still have that fire is fantastic and great. Good for him. I think this is just a great story all around, and I'm very happy he won today.
Yeah, I mean, look, I want to talk about John Rahm as well, and I love that you bring up his temperament because this was a sort of the knock on him, the last few years in golf, at least as of a
And
few
I think
years
it's I
ago.
think it's an unfair knock sometimes, but
Yeah, definitely.
it's
Well,
it's
because
a knock.
the reason it's an unfair knock is because it sticks with you through your whole career, and it's sort of unwarranted, right? Because like if you show a few outbursts, it's
It
just
means you
everyone's like,
care.
yeah, but then it's like, oh, that's the guy who got angry. It's like, well, yeah. Have you ever seen Tiger Woods get angry on the golf course? I have, and I'm the
Hmm.
biggest Tiger Woods fan there is. There are players who slam clubs all the time. There's players who curse all the time. There's players who yell all the
They're
time.
not robots. They have emotion.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know.
and there's a lot of stress that they're under, and so I agree. It's kind of a little frustrating. I'd be frustrated if I was Rom having that reputation, but he's kind of bucked the trend. Gotten rid of that reputation. At least maybe today it will you know remove some of that from his name. Get people to stop saying
Hmm.
that about him because man, he stepped up big time today, Trevor. I for one, I know you say you didn't like a lot of those guys collapsing. I think it's fun watching these players play super difficult courses and super
Hmm.
difficult environments and watching them
Look
struggle.
very human.
It makes them look very human and it makes for an entertaining tournament when everyone's struggling because it's like when everyone's pouring in birdie after birdie after birdie, certain guys pull away and it's just like, eh. So I really like these challenging courses that really make players step up and play near perfect golf. And Oosthuizen and Rom both played really, really, really well today. And ultimately, Rom, kept his composure, made less mistakes, and just made more putts because, man, two left to right downhill putts, Trevor. They were downhill and those things were moving. And especially that putt on 17. That putt on 17 I thought was massive. It was just what a great putt. After not making birdie putts the whole round, he had, I think, Trevor, at least 6 or 7 pars in a row, if not more. Like he couldn't buy
Hmm.
a birdie putt. And to finally make it on 17 was just awesome. And I loved his fire. I love the energy. I love the energy in golf. I want to see more of that energy.
Totally agree.
The energy that Tiger brought to the tournaments. I want to see that. I want to see what John Rahm's energy. I want to see that more. So I really like that. It was a really fun tournament, and I was just really glad I was able to watch it because it was really competitive down to the wire. There were a lot of guys in it, Trevor, on this Sunday, at least till maybe the
Hmm.
last
It's a great leaderboard. It's a
six or seven
great
holes.
leaderboard.
Yeah, without a doubt. So it was a great tournament, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. Respect for John Rahm. And one more
Hmm.
thing, to come off of that COVID debacle and win is just awesome. It's just another little thing that Rahm can, say he overcame to win this tournament. So I thought that was awesome,
Hmm.
and that he was able to win today.
Totally agree.
Yeah. But Trevor, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but if not, I think that just about does it for this podcast.
I want to give a one shout out
Okay,
to
go ahead. Go ahead.
my Arizona Diamondbacks for setting records.
In the wrong
Seven,
way.
17 now straight losses. We lost 9-8 today to the Dodgers. Did have a 6-run eighth inning. We almost came back. But 17 straight losses. Our owner's a joke. I actually think he's trying to tank the team and sell the franchise or get a new stadium in Scottsdale. I've heard both those theories.
Uh,
I don't know what it is. He's cheap. He believes in conspiracy theories, QAnon. I don't know what's wrong with him, but he's the worst owner in sports, arguably. Doesn't pay anybody, gets rid of every good player, every prospect, young pitcher, young player he's traded for sucks and has ended up not hitting. The D-backs are a joke, and they're setting records for it, and I'm glad that they're irrelevant. But go Suns. That's all I have to say.
He's glad that his team's irrelevant. Man, look,
They deserve it. And yeah, the owner deserves it for being such a spaz. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, look, the MLB has a lot of problems. The salary cap is the biggest problem, and the fact that the owners won't spend, and it stems from the lack of salary cap. Owners
Right.
the owners that don't spend, these teams just get absolutely destroyed, and it's just unfair. So I feel bad for small market teams. That's all I have to say. But I don't feel bad for the D-backs because I love to root against Arizona sports. It brings a smile to my face that when these teams struggle. But look, the Phoenix Suns are going to go to the finals, and I'm here for it. So, Suns are going to win their series in 6, and I'm ready to watch them do it. And we'll see what happens, Trevor, this next week. But we will be back next week with another podcast talking about these conference finals, talking about NBA, PGA, MLB news. And yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed. And we'll be back next week.
Go Suns.